1999, a phenomenal event occurred in the skies which altered the course of human history.
It's always eat or be eaten out in the battlefield, no matter who or what you're up against.
I've only spared you from total dissolution.
The aliens have taken hostages and are controlling their bodies. Listen, Ulala, we're taking off by Astrobeat spaceship right now.
Roger.
Oh yeah! This could be fun!
Look at you, hacker. A pathetic creature of meat and bones.
I can foretell many things in the future. So, let's see your future.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I have served Kain a millennium. The gift continued to evolve. We became less human and more divine.
Imagine a story that starts with a main protagonist progressively becoming the main antagonist over time. The tragedy of Macbeth showed us how the ambition of power can consume someone so much that it completely changes who they were portrayed as in the beginning of the story. In Legacy of Kain, the story begins with the titular character reborn as a vampire who seeks revenge against those that cursed him and attempted to curse the world. In his journey, there were two ways Kain could conclude his story: by restoring the world with his own sacrifice, or by embracing the powers he accumulated in his journey at the cost of everything around him. What would traditionally be viewed as a bad ending was only the prologue of a story told by multi-time award-winning writer Amy Hennig. Amy Hennig, who is arguably most known for her work on the original Uncharted trilogy by Naughty Dog, but her career in gaming started much earlier than this. In the 80s, she aspired to be part of the film industry. While studying film, she ended up working for Atari in 1989 as a freelancer. She became an artist for an Atari 7800 port of the Epix game Electro Cop. Electro Cop was released as a third-person action game for the Atari Lynx. The Atari 7800 port Hennig worked on turned the game into a 2D action platformer. Although this version of the game got cancelled, the experience of working on the game inspired Hennig to drop out of film school to seek a career in games, feeling that the medium in gaming was more interesting than films at the time. Her next stop would be to join Electronic Arts, where she would work on another ill-fated game as an artist, Bard's Tale 4. Eventually, her first commercially released game as an artist would be the 16-bit console ports of Desert Strike. Her next game would be her biggest at the time. Originally, Hennig worked on the 1994 Michael Jordan Chaos in the Wind City as an artist, but she would end up becoming that game's lead designer after the game's original designer left the project. After the game's release, Hennig would leave Electronic Arts to join Crystal Dynamics. Her resume for Crystal Dynamics would include work on 3D Baseball as an artist and Blazing Dragons, officially credited under Special Things. But the next game after Michael Jordan Chaos in the Wind City, where she would be more involved in the game's development, would be helping developer Silicon Knights work on the game Blood Omen: Legacy of Kain. For Blood Omen, Hennig was brought on as a design manager. Blood Omen was marketed as a game adults would want to play. The game garnished some hype from E3 1995 and got some moderate success from game reviewers, but the game sold poorly despite claims that the game sold over 2 million units in its lifetime. After the release of Blood Omen, Crystal Dynamics would begin work developing a sequel to the game without the involvement of Silicon Knights. Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver, which would be Amy Hennig's first game as a director, producer, and writer simultaneously. Soul Reaver would be a direct sequel taking place 1500 years after the events of the Blood Omen ending, where Kain chooses to embrace his curse to become stronger while the rest of the world suffers. With Blood Omen coming out at the end of 19 1996, the world had not seen the full potential of the 32-bit console generation yet. Hennig took notice of this, and after observing how different games like Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time were from their predecessors in terms of both the gameplay and technology, she believed that Soul Reaver was an opportunity to re-examine the, at the time, perceptions of action-adventure games. The game would be worked on by Crystal Dynamics, who had retained the rights to the Legacy of Kain franchise from Silicon Knights. During development of the game, Crystal Dynamics was acquired by Eidos Interactive, making them the game's publishers. The gameplay for Soul Reaver shifted from top-down action-adventure to a 3D action-adventure with more puzzle solving and a greater emphasis on exploration. Hennig compared the shift in gameplay from Blood Omen to Soul Reaver to how much the gameplay shifted from the top-down Zelda games to Ocarina of Time. For the story and lore of Soul Reaver, the team looked at stories like Paradise Lost and Nosferatu for inspiration. Crystal Dynamics would also use the same research that Silicon Knights used when they developed Blood Omen. This caused Silicon Knights to file an injunction against Crystal Dynamics, attempting to stop them from promoting any part of the game. The legal dispute was settled out of court, allowing Crystal Dynamics to continue using the Legacy of Kain franchise as they see fit, as long as Silicon Knights was credited as being the original creators. The score was composed by Kurt Harland. Harland was a member of pop group Information Society. The group had achieved success with their gold-certified self-titled album, featuring their most popular single, What's on Your Mind, Pure Energy. Their 1997 album, Don't Be Afraid, contains a track titled Ozar Midrasim, which was sampled as the main theme for Soul Reaver. Harlan had been composing for games before Soul Reaver though, almost exclusively for the Genesis. The games he composed includes Scooby-Doo Mystery, X-Men 2 Clone Wars, Balls, and Nightmare Circus. Harlan described working on the game as finally being able to create a score that was quiet, unobtrusive except during combat, and filled with environmental sounds. The game also featured a star-studded voice cast led by the late Gordon Hunt and Chris Zimmerman. Zimmerman's directing credits include the entire Metal Gear Solid franchise and the No More Heroes franchise. Gordon Hunt achieved fame as a director for numerous Hanna-Barbera properties and movies, and had previously worked with Crystal Dynamics on the games Pandemonium and Blazing Dragons. The cast of Soul Reaver would be led by Michael Bell as Raziel.
Your thanks are premature, Dumas. I have not forgotten whose hands bore me into the abyss.
Tony J as the Elder God.
You did not survive the abyss, Raziel. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
And Simon Templeman as Kain, reprising his role from Blood Omen.
As a man, I could never have contained such forbidden truths. But each of us is so much more than we once were.
The choice to bring in such accomplished voice actors and directors was something Hennig sought during development to ensure that the acting was top-notch from actors that had been classically trained with years of professional experience. Soul Reaver was released in August 1999 in North America for the PlayStation and in Europe later that year. In January and February 2000, the game would be ported to the Dreamcast. The Silicon Knights legal dispute and other technical setbacks prevented Crystal Dynamics from launching the game much earlier than this, but the delays gave them the opportunity to fine-tune as much of the game as they could make. While the game was met with near universal acclaim in sales, there were observations made that the game was released in an unfinished state. Hennig's official statement on this was that Soul Reaver had been over-designed and that the game had to be split into multiple parts. The alternative would have been to delay the game even further, beyond August 1999. But Crystal Dynamics was expected to release the game without further delay internally and externally, so the decision had to be made to split the story and the content of the game. And the story did indeed continue in 2001 with the release of Soul Reaver 2 for the PC and PlayStation 2 from the original Soul Reaver team. The story for Soul Reaver 2 introduced the time paradox trope, resulting in an alternate continuation of Blood Omen 2. Blood Omen 2 was released 6 months after Soul Reaver 2, worked on by a new team at Crystal Dynamics led by Glenn Schofield, who had previously directed multiple titles for Crystal Dynamics and would years later become famous as the creator of the Dead Space franchise. The entire franchise concluded with the 2003 release of Legacy of Kain Defiance, which combined gameplay elements of the set of Blood Omen games and the set of Soul Reaver games, as well as bringing the dev teams of the Soul Reaver games and the dev team of Blood Omen 2 together. Legacy of Kain Defiance would be the last Crystal Dynamics game that Amy Hennig worked on. In 2004, Hennig announced her intentions to leave the studio for what she described as an opportunity to take on a new challenge with old friends. That challenge would be Naughty Dog, then known for its Crash Bandicoot games, but by the time Hennig had joined them, Naughty Dog had started to gain newfound recognition for its Jak and Daxter series, with the third game being Hennig's first game for them. Then she would become the director, writer, and producer of the Uncharted franchise, which propelled Hennig to even bigger universal acclaim than what she got working on any of her previous games. It was during development of the Uncharted games that Hennig would get the chance to work with Chris Zimmerman once again. Hennig would leave Naughty Dog in 2014, 2 years after Uncharted 4 started development. She would join Visceral Games, working only on the games Battlefield Hardline and a cancelled story-driven Star Wars game codenamed Project Ragtag. Currently, Hennig serves as the president of Skydance New Media, where it is reported that they are developing games based on Marvel's Black Panther and Star Wars. During this time, she would be involved in the production of the 2023 Forspoken. All her accolades, talent, ambition, all stemming from an interest in pursuing a career path in video games rather than film. She found success here and there, and her talents throughout her entire career would make her known as one of the most influential female writers in gaming. And her first major break in her successful gaming career started with Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. Her ability to keep up with the then current trends of gaming and to craft a story that was considered to be ambitious made the game one of the most successful from 1999. But beyond Amy Hennig's own personal achievements, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver was a game that took a dark and more serious approach to the action-adventure genre popularized by The Legend of Zelda. The story may have taken multiple games to flesh out, but in the end, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver still stands the test of time as both a fresh and exciting take on the genre, and the beginning of Amy Hennig's potential as a creative director and writer.
At ebworld.com, we know you have better things to do than shop for that ungrateful guy. Let us show you what to buy him. That one video or PC game that will shock and amaze him. We know he doesn't deserve you, but he will worship you for this. Take our word for it.
Oh, hi. I've been shopping for you all day. Thanks.
Always consult EB World first for great prices and expert advice. ebworld.com. We're inside your world. Find the monster on our homepage for a hot deal.
on! The hood.
It's Twisted Metal 4, and Sweet Tooth is large and in charge with all the high-octane attitude you've come to know and love.
9, 8, 9.
Legend of Mana, composed by Yoko Shimomura. Hiroki Kikuta may have innovated what we heard in the Seiken Densetsu series, but when Yoko Shimomura took over the role of primary composer for the franchise, she took the sounds of Mana to a new level. Legend of Mana was described by Shimomura herself in a 2002 interview with Rocket Baby as the soundtrack that best expressed herself. Shimomura had been playing the piano since she was a child, and had always aspired to write music for video games, specifically role-playing games. She started her video game music career at Capcom, working on several of their arcade titles, one of them most notably being Street Fighter II. Then she moved on to Square, where she was given the opportunity to compose for the genre she had always dreamed of working on, fantasy role-playing games. Her first RPG scores were Live Alive and Super Mario RPG, both for the Super Nintendo. It wasn't until Legend of Mana came around where she could fully express herself. She had already gained experience working with the sounds of the PlayStation through Parasite Eve, but her approach to that game was more of an experimental one. With Legend of Mana, her feelings towards fantasy games came together with a system that gave her the highest quality sounds to work with at that point of her career. While Hiroki Kikuta's approach to the Seiken Densetsu games was more eclectic, lighthearted, and upbeat, Shimomura's was more ambient, ethereal, and soothing. And for the first time in the franchise, vocals were provided. The ending theme, Song of Mana, was performed by Swedish vocalist Annika Lundberg of the Swedish electronic country group Red Necks. Like what she did in Parasite Eve, Shimomura wanted to use a vocalist that wasn't popular. Shimomura was so enamored with Lundberg's vocals that she flew to Sweden as soon as she could to do an analog recording of the song. Song of Mana starts off as a vocalized arrangement of the game's opening theme, named after the game itself. Having part of the ending theme be a callback to the opening theme allowed the experience of playing the game to come full circle. Fantasy was always Yoko Shimomura's forte, and she knew it. Legend of Mana was her opportunity to express what she could bring musically to the fantasy genre with less limitations than the ones she faced when working on the Super Nintendo.
Today's assignment, photograph the elusive Pokemon. How do you do it? You're gonna be fast. Ah, missed him.
And you better be good. Great pictures. That's the name of the game in Pokemon Snap. You can go to a participating Blockbuster store, print out your best shots, grab an entry form, and mail it to Nintendo's Take Your Best Shot contest. The best shot wins an Australian safari for $4. And there's lots of other great prizes. $3 per sticker page. Many will enter, few will win.
Hang on, it's gotta be fun.
Pokemon Snap. Take your best shot.
チューチューロケットネズミを助けろチューチューロケット猫は怖いチューチューロケットすごいズババババー
歌がたくさんバズるチューチューロケット2800円安いグリーンクラス
Elrond, god of the forest, the source of all life. He released his servants, the divine spirits, unto the lands. He spoke, I am that which is giving you life. For a time they brought life and happiness to the forest. Soon the forest was visited by fate. The divine spirits created a beast in their own image. Elrond warned, that is the beast of knowledge, and it will someday bring temptation upon you. Thou shalt not associate with it. The divine spirits so promised, and gave birth to the beast of their own image. Such was man's beginning. Time passed, and the forest was again visited by fate. A divine spirit was seduced by a beast of knowledge, and so the promise to Elrond was broken. The spirit lost its divine power, and by the child of man and spirit, it was gained. This new power threatened Elrond, and so was divided into light and darkness.
The guitar rules again.